Okay. Hi, I'm Matt Podobinski. I'm an international fishing guide. I've been guiding since 2008. I've guided in 7 different countries, including Alaska for giant king salmon, Bolivia for golden dorado, Chile for big trout, Colombia for peacock bass and payara, India for giant Himalayan golden mahseer, Mongolia for big taimen, and in the Seychelles for GTs, triggerfish, bonefish. Some of those places have been fly fishing, some of those places have been fishing conventional tackle. But I've been doing this a long time, and I was not impressed by the travel rods that I was using when I started. It was really difficult to find any heavy-duty travel rods that were able to throw bigger lures like for muskie or mahseer or dorado or any of that stuff. Most of the travel rods that you get were little 3-piece spinning rods that you could put in a backpack, and they were kind of chintzy. There was a couple decent rods. St. Croix made a halfway decent one at the time. G. Loomis made a pretty decent one at the time, but they were shorter rods also, which kind of limited the actions and stuff of the rod. So now, fast forward 15 years of guiding and kind of searching the globe for different tackle and better rods, I have found a few different rods that apply to the applications that I've been looking for, fishing for bigger fish all over the world, to be able to throw bigger lures and to be able to travel easier and be able to be durable enough that you would want to take to some of these destinations. I've still got guys when I'm guiding that show up with the big rod tubes, and it's a huge hassle. First of all, the rod tubes get bounced all around when you're traveling. You don't know if your rods are going to show up broken, and it's always an extra bag to check, and they're pretty expensive to check those big bags. Sometimes if you're bringing a 7/6 rod or something like that, you know, it's over $100 to check that extra bag, and you're not checking that much weight. You're only checking the weight of the rod tube and the few rods that you've got in there. So the travel rod is a way better option. When I first started, your travel rods were basically all 3-piece, but now you've got some really cool ones that are going to be up to 5 or 6-piece and still have the feel of a 1-piece rod. And one of the best rods that I found so far for this is the Ironman Throne Series rod, which is a 5-piece rod. It breaks down into just 22 inches long sections. Comes in a soft case, and you could easily put this inside a sport bag or on the outside of a backpack or in your big suitcase. You can put up a whole bunch of different rods in a suitcase and be able to fit these in there. It'd probably be better off coming in a hard case, maybe a double hard case so you could fit several rods in there. You can make your own PVC rod tube that you could put several rods in there, but the soft case probably cuts down on the overall cost of the rod. You probably don't need that many hard cases when you're going on a trip, and you could just buy one hard case on your own to put your rods in. But soft case is pretty nice for storing the rod. It's got individual sections in it for each section of the rod that you can slip it into, so it just makes it kind of a neat, easy storage space. Some info on the rod before I take it out here and show it to you. Like I said, it's the Ironman Throne Series travel rod. Rod looks cool. It's got a cool name. Ironman is a Malaysian company. The rod retails for about, this particular model, this is the extra heavy model. Its lure weight is from 11 to 140 grams. 140 grams for us on the standard system, not the metric system, is just under 4 ounces. And I can tell you the rod is definitely beefy enough to throw lures a little bit bigger than that. I throw some big wide glides for peacock bass that probably, I think those weigh like 6 ounces, 6+ ounces, and it throws it easily. And one of the really cool things about this rod is it's got 2 different configurations. You can use this rod rigged up in a 6'10" version or a 7'6" version. So if you're throwing some jerk baits, you might want that shorter section, or if you're throwing some top waters, you might want that longer section. Give you a little bit better hook sets, a little bit better line management, but that's up to you. And I think it's a really cool option to have basically 2 rods in one when you're picking up one of these rods. Fishing it as a shorter rod or a longer rod is pretty cool. Like I said, this is the extra heavy version of the rod. It comes in a bunch of different versions, an extra heavy, a light. It's got spinning versions, casting versions. This is the rod I found most applicable for what I'm using it for. Peacock bass, muskie, giant wolffish, payara, that kind of thing. Rods or big fish, we're going to have to throw a little bit heavier lures to them and then actually have a lot of beef to be able to muscle those fish away from heavy cover or out of big current or away from rocks or any of those things. You're going to want a pretty heavy duty rod. And this is it. It has stood the test of all those big nasty fish that I've fished for with it and come out on top, and it's looking pretty good. And you could use it for some big catfish applications, I think. Yeah, I think the sky is kind of the limit with it. You can kind of put it through the ringer and see what it can stand up to. The rod itself, even though it's a 5-piece rod, is pretty lightweight. It's carbon fiber construction. It only weighs 202 grams or 7.1 ounces. And that's not really heavy at all. That's pretty lightweight. For your own reference, this is the TT76XXH-4. If you're going to order the rod, that's the one that this one is. It's PE rated for PE 4 to 8. So that's the line diameter that you would use on it. And I think that's up to 85-pound test braid, 45 to 85-pound test braid. So it's heavy duty. It's rated for a really heavy duty fishing and heavy duty lures, heavy duty line. It's the real deal. So first thing off, with that soft case, you've got these little Velcro straps that kind of bind the soft case together. And they are useful in pulling the rod apart, which I'll show you a little bit later. Sometimes when you're using these rods in really hot environments, the carbon fiber or graphite expands and the rod gets stuck together. And I mean, you can try and soak it in the water, but a lot of times the river is a little bit too warm to actually have that rod blank contract and have you be able to pull it apart. If you got access to air conditioning, you can put the rod up by the air conditioning and have it shrink down that way and have it come right apart. But with these little straps, it's got this grippy rubber on the inside, and you can wrap the different sections with it and then pull the rod apart easily because they'll be able to grip it. And that's super useful if you're using it in some of these tropical environments. So if you're taking your rod, don't leave these at home. Make sure you take these with you, because if your rod is stuck together, you're going to want to make sure that you have these to make sure that you can pull your rod back apart, get it back into the case, and be able to travel with it again. Onto the rod itself. We'll go with the handle section first. And this is one of the rods that I've got two of these rods. I've got one that I haven't used yet. It's still got some of the plastic on the handle, and another one that I have used. And I've caught a bunch of really big peacock bass on it. Peacock bass up to about 18 pounds. Payara on it up to about 15 pounds. And some other odds and ends here and there in different places. I've mostly used it in Colombia. And if you know anything about peacock bass, they're super tough, super strong, and they will put your tackle through the ringer. If there's any weak point in the tackle, they will find it, and you'll bust rods for sure. And I haven't broken any of these ever. So that's right there is a good selling point for the rod. The rod's got a split grip handle, which I'm not a super duper fan of, but it's okay. It's got a pretty nice cork handle, and it's got some composite foam there on the back. It's pretty hard, heavy duty, durable foam right there. I'd probably like it a little bit better if it had a solid cork handle. It's got a Fuji reel seat. It's got a double screwing reel seat. So you've got the first screw to where you can kind of get it down to where the reel is, and then the locking screw in right there that kind of locks your reel in so it won't slip and that one won't unscrew. That's really good. I've had some other travel rods where it just had the single screwing part to the reel seat, and the seat would loosen up as you were losing it, so you had to check and make sure that it was tight. One thing that I don't like about the rod is the trigger grip. I'm not sure exactly what the deal with the trigger grip is, if it's made for people with a little bit smaller hands, but this particular trigger grip for me, I think the trigger's a little bit small, and you can see that the reel seat is flared on the bottom. And for my hands, I got a little bit bigger hands and kind of fat fingers. If I'm using this rod for a whole week of fishing, there's been a couple times where I've gotten a blister on my finger. And maybe that'll happen with any rod. I haven't had it happen with any other rod except this one with this reel seat. But I mean, it could happen. You're using it in a hot place, it's getting sweaty or whatever. So I don't know. But this particular design with this smaller trigger isn't the most comfortable for my hand. But it is durable, and overall the rod has performed. So I can't complain about anything there. It's just for my particular hands and this particular seat, it's not the most comfortable. So it might be the perfect trigger and reel seat for your hand, not the perfect one for me. So the other sections of the rod, take it out here. You can see the different sections of the rod. It's a pretty rod. You can see the below this first, or above this first ferrule section here, it's got these arrows that you line up to be able to make sure that the guides and stuff are lined up. And then, I'm not sure exactly if you could see it, but the whole rod blank itself is wrapped with some sort of like carbon fiber or something like that, all the way up to the blank, which I think kind of increases some of the durability of the rod. It's pretty sensitive. It's not just a pool cue. It's got a good little bit of flex at the tip, and you can feel what's going on with your lure and the fish when you get a big fish on here. It's got Fuji reel seat and Fuji guides, which are some of the best guides that you can get on any reel, or any rod anywhere. That's one of the first things you're going to look at when you get a rod, is if it's got Fuji guides. And it's got Fuji guides. They're super well made. I haven't broken any of the guides. This is the second section of the rod where it's got some of the info on the rod. It's got the Ironman logo, Ironman Malaysia right there. I'm thinking these rods are made in Malaysia, which is not a knock on the rod. Some quality fishing stuff comes out of there for sure. And then it's got the name of the rod, Travel Concept Rod, the Throne, and then all the ratings, 610 to 7.6, and PE 4 to 8, and all that other stuff on there. Easy to put together. When you first slide these sections together, they're a little bit kind of stiff, and you want it a little bit stiff so they kind of slide in and lock in to get the different sections together. So that's the first section, handle section, to the first section of the rod, which has got all that information on it. And then the next section after that, here's where you're going to kind of feel where it locks in. And you've got those two different arrow sections to make sure that it lines up correctly. It's one of the important things that you want when you're using it. And you might want to put some wax on here to get the two sections together to make sure it kind of stays, but it lines up and kind of sets in pretty nice in there. And it's not easy to pull apart, which is good. You want it to kind of lock together. And I have not had any of these rods come apart as I've been fishing them, but periodically while you're fishing, you want to double check and make sure that they're stuck together. Like I said before, one of the things that I have had is actually the rod jam and get stuck together in some of the hotter environments. And that's when you're going to use these sections, or these straps, to wrap around the two sections to pull them together. And that's kind of like those old plastic things that you used to be able to get for a jar that you couldn't open. You'll put one on one section, one on another section, and then you'll be able to pull those sections apart more easily with those grips. And that really helps. The first time that I took this rod to Colombia, I left these and the soft case at home, and I put it in my own PVC tube. And I did get some jams with the rod, and I had to use a friend to help take it apart. And I didn't know that these sections, or these straps, were made for that they would grip like that. My buddy who had some of these rods too, he had these with, and he put it around his rod and pulled it together. And I was like, oh man, I've got to get some of those. And he's like, well, they came with a rod. And I was like, oh yeah, that's what those are. So I make sure that I take these with from now on when I travel with the rod to make sure that I can pull the rod apart if it does get jammed. Yeah, overall, would I buy the rod? Definitely, I would buy this rod again. It retails for about $285. I think I said that before, but it's good to say again, which is, it's not super cheap, but it's not crazy expensive either. Some of the other travel rods, like Zenek, for one, rods are over $1,000. And, you know, do you get that much more out of it for the extra $800 or $700 you would spend on it? I don't know. I don't have a Zenek. I wouldn't talk bad about it. You know, if Zenek wants to send me a free rod and have me review it, that'd be great. But I'm pretty happy with the Ironman rods and some of the other rods that I reviewed. These are some of the best travel rods that I've used. They've stood up to super tough fish, and I would definitely recommend you getting these if you're going to be doing any travel fishing for big, nasty fish like peacock bass, New Guinea black bass. I've definitely had some friends fish for them, and they said the next time they'd be going, they'd definitely be getting some of these Ironman rods. One of my fellow guides that I worked with in Colombia, he's more oriented towards the Asian fishing scene. So he's fished a lot for giant snakehead, PNG black bass, barramundi, that type of thing. And he wasn't familiar with the Ironman before, and he tested out my Ironman there in Colombia, and he was very impressed with it. And he said he'll be getting one when he goes back to Thailand and works there. And he did. He picked it up, and he told me he's, you know, it's one of his go-to rods now that he uses. So, you know, if it comes out on top of some of the travel rods that I've used from the rods that are available to me and to him on the other side of the world, I definitely think it's one you should check out and get if you're fishing for some of those bigger fish and throwing bigger lures. You can check out some videos on the internet where guys are actually fishing for these. The Ironman team does a bunch, but there's not a lot of reviews on it. So I wanted to review the rod and tell you my experience fishing with it. Like I said, I fished some big lures with it, great big poppers for peacocks, some of the big ripper baits, big glide baits, big jerk baits, big minnow baits, and you can throw this rod all day with those bigger baits. You're not getting tired. It casts really well. It handles a wide range of different lures, and most importantly, it fights the fish really well. I like it in the 7/6 configuration mostly. That's just my personal preference. I like fishing a little bit longer rod. It's a little bit better for when the fish gets close to the boat. You've got a little bit more shock absorption. When that fish is close to the boat, you can back off on the drag, and then you can kind of really direct the fish where it's going when it gets close. And with the 7/6 rod, you can really do that a lot easier. If you want to fish it in the 610 version, probably a little bit better if you're fishing in a boat that's a little bit lower to the water and you're working big jerk baits and stuff. That way you don't have the rod tip slapping the water, but that's all personal preference. So definitely recommend picking up one of the Ironman Extreme Travel Concept rods. The Throne is what it's called, and really impressed by it, really like it. And if you pick one up, let me know how you like it. I got mine at Kudakilla. I've got a code that's available. If you wanted to pick one up, you get 10% off. So, you know, it's good to save some money. My code is matt.p10, and that'll get you 10% off at Kudakilla, off anything that you buy from them. So check them out. They've been super helpful with me picking up some of these hard to get travel rods. You know, it's not like you can just go down to your local sporting goods shop and pick these up. Sometimes there's specialty retailers that you have to be able to find that have them, and Kudakilla, based in Texas, has them. They've got the Jabbers rods, the Ironman rods, some of the other big jigging rods for GTs and popping rods for GTs, so definitely check them out. So that's my review for the Ironman. It's going.